I want us to transition to the next topic, and this is, we are talking about manifestos of the presidential candidates that will start being unveiled today. We understand that Azimio Moja is expected to do that later today. Let's listen to some of the promises that have been coming from these political leaders from both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja. Listen.
Huyu William Ruto ako na mpango wa kubadilisha uchumi, tuteremshe bei ya vyakula. Yule mzee mwingine anataka kubadilisha katiba, aongeze bei ya kila kitu.
Lazima tupunguze gharama ya maisha. Lazima tupunguze bei ya unga na bei ya mafuta na bei ya sukari na bei ya bidhaa za wananchi wa kawaida ya chakula. Na mimi nasema hapa, tutaweka pesa ya kutosha kwa kilimo, tuwasaidie wakulima wetu, tuwapunguzie gharama ya mbegu, tuwapunguzie gharama ya mbolea, na tuhakikisha kwamba kila mkulima ako na uwezo wa kuzalisha chakula zaidi, ili chakula ifike hapa sokoni ikiwa bei nafuu, na tuondoe brokers na tuondoe makatel, ili chakula ipatikane kwa bei nafuu, kila mwananchi aweze kulisha familia yake.
Mwaka huu kwa vyovyote, mbele na nyuma, kulia na kushoto, tupande milima, tushuke mabonde, wapende wasipende, mwaka huu tunaweka pesa bilioni 100 ya serikali kutengeneza ajira ya hawa vijana.
Sisi tunaleta ukombozi ya Wakenya, tunamaliza ukabila.
Viongozi na Raila na Karua, sasa inakuwa Raroa ufisadi, Raroa njaa, Raroa ukosefu wa kazi, Raroa ukosefu wa maji, Raroa mambo ya elimu.
Hiyo timu ya Raila na Karua, hiyo ni timu ya watu hawachezi masaa ya kazi. Hiyo ni timu ya watu wameamua kufanyia Wakenya kazi. Inawezekana vijana wapate ajira. Na vijana, mkiniangalia utaona mimi ni mama wa vijana wote wa Kenya. Palipo mama na baba, mambo ya vijana itaangaliwa sawa sawa. Palipo mama na baba, njaa itapigwa marufuku.
All right, in very short statements, they are saying what they want to do for the country, and they have promised quite much, including giving billions of money to small and medium enterprises on the side of William Ruto, lowering the cost of living, whether it's unga, whether it's milk, cooking oil, petroleum products, boosting the economy. All that is quite clearly said. For Raila Odinga, talking about dealing with the ethnicity, ukombozi wa taifa, that is liberating the country, make water available, deal with education challenges, and work on youth unemployment. So very flowery, very clear on what they would want to see. But the how is the biggest question. Joining us now is Professor Karuti Kanyinga from the University of Nairobi. He's also a governance expert and teaches development studies. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Great. And as we dive into this conversation then, how are we supposed now to be seeing the translation of the political, what I would call political rhetoric, or the promises that we've had on the ground, into manifestos, documents that can actually make sense and can be put into action?
Thank you very much, Sam. My apology for coming late, but let me also add my voice to the preparedness issues, because they feed into what we are doing. Two things we must admit here, that our electoral commission is always very technically prepared to carry out elections. Actually, we conduct better elections than in America and UK. If you look to what we have done for the last 3 or so elections, we are incrementally changing and actually adding value to the way elections are conducted. And in Africa, I think we are doing well. But the only problem with our IEBC is that it's never politically prepared. It's never politically prepared, but it's usually technically prepared. It's not politically prepared because of the manner in which we appoint commissioners, and the trust in Kenyans always varies from one region to another, the trust and confidence they have in the elections. A while back, if Nyanza region would say IEBC is not prepared, Central Kenya would be saying IEBC is very well prepared, right? So we are even divided in how we see institutions because of ethnicity. If Rift Valley says today that they are confident with IEBC, I'm telling you Nyanza will not be saying the same, right? Because of the divisions that we carry. And this is what cannibalizes, this is what weakens all our institutions of governance. Now I'm mentioning that simply because the manner in which we perceive institutions eventually leads to how politicians establish the same institutions after they kill them after every elections. All our constitutional commissions today are a mirror image of the 2013-2016 constitutional commissions. What does that leave us with? We are left with only one conclusion, that governance is a very important feature of our society, and we need to be paying attention to governance, that even if we did economic development in this country without sound governance framework, that economic development will come to falter. President Kibaki did not learn enough of that lesson because he concentrated on economic performance, forgot about inclusive politics, and there we went to 2007 political crisis. At present, we see two competing messages. There is William Ruto, the deputy president, and the UDA that are actually continuing with the same arguments that they had from 2013, emphasizing more than anything else on economic performance and economic development, but we have not heard them much talking about what is it that they are going to do on inclusive politics in this country. What do they do to ensure that if you are from marginalized communities, minority communities, you are also part of Kenya? We have also heard Raila now talking about the need for improved governance, ethnicity. Actually, for the first time, I think yesterday they talked very much about the struggle with corruption, how to address the issues of corruption. Now, I'm mentioning this because we can see already some elements of of what could be dividing the way they both of them see the country. One may be paying a lot of attention to governance, and one may be paying a lot of attention to economic performance. But is that the solution? My view is that all these are the issues that when you look at all Kenyans, and today you look at all the surveys that have been conducted on what are the key challenges facing the country today, all parts of the country cite almost these two things without exception. The cost of living is high, and others say and at the same corruption is mentioned as number two. Do they have solutions? Do all these coalitions have solutions? The answer lies in how we see them crafting this agenda and who is next to each other. If you see someone talking about economic development and is surrounded by people with a corrupt tendency, you can believe that actually even if they started economic development programs, those are for putting their hands into the till. If you see, on the other hand, people talking about unity, diversity, without talking about much about economic development, you know that there is going to be some kind of incoherence in how they run their policies.
Very interesting perspective. You should have come earlier. Don't you agree? And Advocate Mutuma, so now here we are. I mean, for close to 2 years or even more, we've heard of what really defines these politicians, especially William Ruto versus Raila Odinga. So at this critical time that you're 64 days, or just call it 2 months to the election, what is this magic that they can do in how they translate it into a manifesto that people can associate with?
I think creating a manifesto is the easiest bit in all this, but then implementation of that manifesto and whether there is even willingness to even do anything about it, because like you said, Jubilee had one of the most beautiful manifestos in 2017 and 2013, but to what extent was that manifesto ever implemented? So coming up with a manifesto is okay, but then do we intend to implement that manifesto? And I'm saying this considering that the topmost aspirant in this election are our incumbents. Allow me use that word.
What do you mean?
Let me explain a bit. It is the incumbent against the incumbent. William Ruto is the current deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. In the first term, he was a co-president by all definitions and assessment. So he was part of what we are going through today. Raila Odinga, from 2017, has been in government informally, and he cannot run away from that fact. He's been advising his brother. His brother has come out to say that were it not for Raila Odinga, I would not have been able to achieve ABCD. So he has a share of blame or credit, if you want.
So has he advised him on executive actions or on politics?
It is both, because you cannot divide politics from policies. Because politics is what breeds good policies, and when you look at them, because the summary of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio's manifesto is economic empowerment. The question that we should be putting them.
Have you seen something I haven't?
No, the summary.
Let me just add voice to what you're saying.
Just hold on,
there are two things that we need to emphasize in the context of politics in our societies. That's common thread in all countries, actually, where is political power that is formally constituted is usually countermanded by informal power. In other words, there are movers and shakers of politics that you'll never see in any public space, in any formal place. That's what we usually call informal power. Now, informal power holders are usually very, very, very strong in terms of how they move key government decisions. In many instances, in America, the people in the Wall Street, for instance, decide government policies and ensure that those informal institutions will do so. In Kenya here, we have got informal power holders. I will not mention them because they are, you can't even dare call them on this TV station yourself, right? You're only dealing with Raila Odinga because he's one face of those very influential informal power holders. Okay. But that does not mean Raila is an incumbent. The fact that he's enjoying informal power because of his relationship with the president is what maybe Advocate Mutuma here is talking about as being very influential. There is nothing wrong with that because that's the context in which we live, and that's how politics is moved in this country. And by the way, even appointment of cabinet ministers in this country, if you look at the trend from the from early 2000, is determined by these movers and shakers of Kenya's politics, without exception.
You were making a point.
You can't dare call some of them to this station.
I'll give you an opportunity to go back to that. But Javas first. So now, for these manifestos, because like you alluded earlier, it appears that you've been cheated several times at elections. You brought this very beautiful manifesto documents. We told about how many months it's going to take for delivery. But we are never keen as voters to really analyze and see, did they deliver what they promised or they're just bringing excuses? So this time round, what shall we or must we look for in these documents?
I think, let me state that the issue of manifestos remains quite important in our politics. Nonetheless, many leaders, top leaders, are always far removed from the realities of the contents of these documents because they are worked on by technocrats, sadly. And so they are brought to them for presentation purposes only. And some of them will interact with this document on the eve of its launch. And that's the sad thing. The other thing is that most of us Kenyans have got an aversion of engaging with textual, or texts or books or content. Most people, most Kenyans will not read even these manifestos. Even if you have to develop a popular version, still they'll want to walk around with the majority of Kenyans but will not read. They'll tell you that as long as so-and-so has presented it to us, we know he'll deliver. Didn't Mwai Kibaki campaign on the platform of anti-corruption in the run-up to the 2002 elections? And he said, and we remember even they said that within 100 days, they will have a new constitution, etc. and whatnot. Now, didn't we have graft in the Mwai Kibaki regime? In fact, I can enumerate about 10 scandals during the Kibaki regime. Now, look at the individuals today facing off each other, especially the leading individuals. Raila Odinga here of Azimio, William Ruto of Kenya Kwanza. They were together in the Grand Coalition government. Wasn't there the Anglo leasing? Wasn't there the maize scandal? Wasn't there the scandal, about 14 scandals in the Ministry of Water during the Kibaki regime? Check, they're there. Fact check. The other thing is that there was a scandal to do with free primary education, money for free primary education. There was an NHIF scandal to do with the health cover for public servants. All this happened during the Grand Coalition, and all of them were there. For example, one of the key supporters of Raila Odinga, Madam Charity Ngilu, wasn't she asked by President Kenyatta to step aside in 2015 when she was Cabinet Secretary for Lands? Now, all these guys have got a checkered past. A number of them. In fact, I'm talking about all these guys in terms of the coalitions. Wasn't there the Ministry of Foreign Affairs scandal to do with the procurement or the purchase of embassy in Japan? All these scandals are there. No media is looking at all this, fact-checking and calling them out. Most of them remain unresolved. In this government, for example, and I even listened to President Kenyatta's speech during the Madaraka Day speech. And he even said and advised the next government that they should fight graft. Yet graft in his own administration remains unresolved. For example, even the KEMSA scandal is one of them. The mobile clinic scandal is one of them. All these scandals are there. Why are we casting a blind eye?
So what do we do? Because we have a decision to make.
My argument is this.
Just hold on. We have a decision to make in 64 days.
Yes.
How do we judge the documents that are presented to us?
Now, we will examine this document. And in fact, I'm not holding my breath about the manifesto to be released today by Azimio and Raila Odinga. Neither will I hold my breath about the one that will be released by Kenya Kwanza. They will be perfect. In fact, when you look at the manifesto for Jubilee in 2013, that was accompanied in the prelude by personal statements of the principles that included President Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, Deputy President, Madam Charity Ngilu, and RC's Najib Balala. Personal statements about fighting corruption, providing food security, water, etc. All those guys were not achieved. All those things were not achieved when they took power. So for me, the thing is this. We must not be taken or be buoyed by all these exciting issues and the confetti and how glamorous the event will be and the speeches, or in fact how well edited and presented the document will be. The questions, like I indicated earlier at the beginning of this show, is this: that, for example, when Raila Odinga unveils his manifesto today, when he talks about the economy and the industries that he wants to build, when he talks about, for example, how he wants to invest more, for example, in education, or in technology, and in food security, how will he finance these projects? And how do we hold them to account? In other countries, and at times we like referring to the US, when a president says that within the first 100 days I'll want to do this, they try as much as possible, 90% of the chance at least, to do it. And in the life of their term, at least.
Okay.
But the issue is not the comparison here. For me, the thing that I have an issue with is that most of these politicians take Kenyans for a ride. They present very impressive documents. But when it comes to implementation, it becomes a challenge. Today, the Big Four agenda in the second term of the Jubilee administration, what's the percentage of implementation of the Manifesto of Jubilee? Why are not people asking President Kenyatta and William Ruto what's the percentage of implementation of their manifesto?
In fact, Javas, I think it is 2 weeks ago, William Ruto offered what sounded like a regime apology for not performing as expected. So I don't know that suffices. I'll get to you, Advocate Elias Mutuma, on the question of corruption. But Prof, here, so we've heard of William Ruto talking about how to resolve the land question, especially at the coast. He has spoken about moving port services or port operations back to where the port is. He has talked about financing the judiciary and agencies that are involved in the fight against corruption, and by and large talked about the bottom-up economic approach that would give certain billions of money to small and medium enterprises. But also Raila Odinga talking about 6,000 shillings to persons that are unemployed and vulnerable. He's spoken about Baba Care. He's spoken about building industries, including a fertilizer farm. But knowing what we know in this country, an economy that the public debt is where it is, we use almost 50% of our resources in ordinary revenue to pay debts. How is this possible? What magic bullet do they have, or is it just something they have to do because we must have an election every 5 years?
Thank you very much. But let me begin by pointing out that actually manifestos sometimes can lay the groundwork for national policies. And we learned this from President Kibaki's economic recovery strategy, which was generally a manifesto made up which was an economic blueprint made up from the promises that different parties in the coalition had made. Jubilee Manifesto was also full of infrastructure, but now we notice why it was full of infrastructure. It was providing resources for at least every boy and the boys around them. So I'm simply saying that manifestos sometimes are made for different purposes by people who are around there. Can they be implemented? It depends on the political commitment of the person at the top. If the person at the top is insisting on commitment to the various elements of that manifesto, it can be done. But as I said, there are movers and shakers, informal power holders who are around these individuals who may actually shift even the attention of national government to something else. We have also missed the point in this country about one particular institution. The National Treasury is an imperial national treasury. The National Treasury will never allocate funds where they feel these funds are going to crowd out resources for debt payments and the rest, So we have never been able to democratize how the National Treasury plays out in national development. The National Treasury remains as a creature of the national government and continues to undermine what we can call national development thinking in many ways. Let me go back to the promises that the various leaders are talking about. For the first time, Sam, I would like to appreciate the fact that we have moved our politics to serious discussions about economic well-being, about economic issues, and about the future of the country. Whether we want it or not, we have seen a major shift in terms of where people are concentrating attention. The second shift we have noticed is that actually what we call ethnic kingpins are no longer important in our politics, right? Their powers have been completely diluted by these particular discussions we're having today. However, does that mean that it's going to address issues like corruption and the rest? My answer is the following. In every election, there is always going to be a scandal, as Barman has, my friend has said here, because if power is always protected by money. And money is always made by power. So whether we are talking about Azmi or whether we are talking about Ruth aside, the corruption is the bridge that brings power and money together. And this has been normalized in our society. There is a question I like asking in every survey. If you are given money during an election, will you take money and vote for a candidate of your choice, or you take money and vote for that candidate? Over 60% usually say that I'll take the money and think about what to do next, right? Meaning even the voters are waiting for you to come with the money. Now, corruption has made our politics very expensive, and therefore we know very well that all these influential politicians have got people who will be rolling their campaigns, whether we want it or not.
Right.
And these people on both sides are on both sides.
Okay.
And immediately after the elections, they will be looking for a way to get back their money.
Advocate Mutuma, so this question of dealing with corruption, I mean, Uhuru Kenyatta came to the presidency with such a big promise, and actually towards the end of first term and start of second term, he was you could see what strings he was pulling. But today it's been reduced to or rather, it has been defined, at least by the Deputy President, that it's personalized war, that the corruption war is being used as a political weapon. Why? And this time you don't see it as a major issue on the ballot. But is there a real solution and dedication by either of the teams to deal with this menace that has beaten at least two presidents?
Thank you. First of all, allow me weigh in a bit on the issue of manifesto. Because for the issue of manifesto to make sense, we must be able to look at it in two ways. Is it a promise or is it a contract? Because what seems to be happening here is that we are getting manifestos as a promise, telling electorates what they want to hear. That's what is being put into these campaign rallies. That's what is being reduced into these documents, so that you're just telling us what is sweeteners. You're giving us sweeteners. But if it was to be a contract, then it means it is implementable. It is enforceable. And I think that's what Mwai Kibaki carefully and cleverly introduced in terms of Vision 2030, so that we do not need to create a new promise every election period. Let us have a strategic plan right from the beginning, so that every government that is coming in does not need to create, something so different or something that appears so nice, yet they even have no means of implementing the same. So if then we would put any incoming government to task to implement Vision 2030, we will not even have the need so far so much to have manifestos in place, because they do not mean anything to them in any case. Now, back to the issue of corruption. And that's why I was very keen to introduce the issue of incumbency. Raila, Prof, has called them, the movers and shakers of this country. So that makes him an incumbent, because his voice matters. And when he used to be in opposition, we would fail him. We would see him ensuring that certain things go the right way or blocks them from happening, just by merely speaking about them. He lost that when he joined government in 2017.
That's true.
So now, 2018. So now the issue of corruption must be looked in this sense. Who are corrupt individuals? How does corruption come about? And Prof has explained, and I agree 100%. We have actually budgeted for corruption. When we put down our budget every year, we have a slot for corruption, so that you find that infrastructure is taking a lion's share of the same, knowing very well that we do not necessarily want this project, but we want it done because we have our cut in it. So number one, if we reduce budgeted corruption, then that would help that there is nothing to steal, because we've seen projects being done. Yes, they have been done, but how much money has been lost in those projects? So if we had budgeted the right amounts, then we would ensure that there are no spillovers. I think that, to me, is one way of dealing with it. Number two, looking at Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, the people surrounding them are the same guys that have been in government, that have been perpetuating corruption ever since. So how do you then throw the same people who have now acquired a share in your government and tell them, you're corrupt? When you look at Azimio, the people surrounding Raila Odinga and the people campaigning for him, they're not campaigning for him for the sake of it. It's because they have a stake in his government. And they're the same individuals whom have been accused of corruption. Same case to Kenya Kwanza. The same individuals that are in the EACC's list, the same people that are in the DPP's files, are now supporting William Ruto, others are supporting. So are you telling me that once William Ruto gets to power or Raila gets to power, he will be bold enough to tell the same guys who have formed government with him that pack and go home because you're corrupt?
Same forest, different monkeys.
Yeah, when you say that budgetary corruption, it appears like you're talking about corruption being part of the cost of doing business. I want us to look at some of the feedback that you're receiving from different viewers. Remy Butia, you're saying manifestos would matter if we had a political class that regarded them as commitment to be honored. Given the proven personal qualities of the current crop, they are only worth a giggle at the false postures the parties adopt in the run-up to the polls. Kipto Ruto, having a manifesto is not a problem. Ensuring that manifesto is implemented is the issue, all right? Eric Nyakango, top leaders are selected or elected based on performance, track record, not potential and future promises. We do not have a legitimate way to quantify potential. Kenyans should choose the next president based on consistency in principle and ideologies. Resist unrealistic promises. Okay. Engineer Lazaro, very impressive to watch campaign. Definitely changes from usual name callings and use of abusive languages against each other to issue-based. All right. And Bobo Tieno, it was DP Ruto who first raised an eyebrow against IEBC Kenya and received jabs from Azimio La Umoja. And now it is Raila Odinga raising grievances against them with demands. For sure, never trust a politician. Okay, Franco Rinde, IEBC should work on tying up the loose ends to ensure we have a credible electoral process. The commissioners in place have the experience from last election and they know where it all went wrong. Gentlemen, I wish we had more time, especially for the latter conversation, but we'll do this, especially after, why, you look surprised that you're finishing. Especially once the two formations at least are able to unveil their manifestos, we can have a conversation on that to talk more about it. Professor Karuti Kanyinga, thank you for making time for us. Advocate Elias Mutuma and Javas Bigambo, all for making time for us this morning. And this continues. We'll be sure to bring you the latest in as far as these conversations are concerned. My name is Sam Gituku. See you tomorrow on Daybreak at 6 a.m. Bye for now.